Hello and welcome to Small Things Brought Together. My name is Robin Love, and this is our first episode in the sixth season of Small Things Brought Together. So we're starting a new season, unbelievably, the sixth one, and I thought I would take this moment as an opportunity to recall how Small Things Brought Together came into being, which was, it started actually not as conversations with artists, but actually as a way to share and invite in anyone, everyone into the creative process by just offering small, very small, doable prompts that anyone could do with things they had at home. And I did that for a while, and then I realized, I think what I really want to do is talk to artists and others about their creative process, which also is very inspiring, I think, to anyone and everyone, to see that actually this process of making art is really just one thing after another, one small thing after another. And yeah, so now we're in our sixth year of doing that. And I'm delighted that this sixth season opens with a twin spin, meaning with an artist who we have interviewed before, Jody Hojin Kimmel Sensei. So welcome, Hojin Sensei, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that intro.
Yeah, so I'll just say a little bit and then maybe you can fill in. So Hojin Sensei is the abbot of the Zen Center of New York City, Fire Lotus Temple, also the training director in the Mountains and Rivers Order of Zen Buddhism. She has been in full-time residence for over 30 years and is a transmitted teacher with students and also academically trained as an artist. And a very rare, I can't even think of anyone else who is a Zen teacher who uses art as a gate or a pathway within Zen training. So a gate to liberation, towards liberation. And yeah, I mean this there is a tradition of that in Zen of using the arts. And yet I can't think of anyone who's working right now the way that you are, Hojin Sensei. So it's really yeah, so you're unique and I feel, when I think about Small Things Brought Together as like my attempt to kind of get everyone engaged in their innate creativity, whether or not they believe they have that, you know, and and I feel like certainly your the way you teach also does that, and I guess I can hardly say also because I know you've inspired me enormously to to do that. So yeah, yeah. So
Thank
welcome.
you. Thanks, Robin, however you know you. I've really enjoyed working with you over these years because our creativity definitely is inspired by all things that we're in touch with. If we can open to it and we feed off of each other, we grow with each other in such a way. And I loved your intro of wanting to invite people into the creative process because, in a sense, we're always creating. I mean, that's our entire life, right? Um, every day is a ritual. We put our feet on the floor. First, we open our eyes to a new day, and then we have to start creating. It may have gone on through the night. um, and then um, we may get up and decide we want to drink or something hot or take a shower. We choose some clothing to adorn our bodies. So we put something on a plate perhaps or into a certain cup that we may look at several on the shelf and choose one. These are all creative decisions. Um, so it always feels like a big deal when someone is invited into the creative process, because mostly we just see things hanging on walls in museums, or we think it's a selected few that are invited in. But each of us is not the same on one level, on a relative sense. Um, and every mark, every breath will be breathed differently by each person. And if we can trust that, wow, what what new inventions we will have. And that's what we need in the world, is the artists bring new vision, new
Mm,
language. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I I feel just to say, you were we did have a previous conversation, and I highly recommend everyone go watch that. It's actually one of has the some of the largest viewership of any of the episodes, so I know people have been watching it. Um, yeah, but I feel like I recall from that conversation the when I'll, if you don't mind, I'll just share my own experience of, coming into Zen training, learning that you were an artist and kind of hiding a little bit that I was an artist. I feel like I didn't expose myself until sometime later. And, so it's funny that like there's a bit of fear that when you hear the word creative process, even as an artist, to like, what is that? What if I'm going to be asked to do something different? And then all the other instant judgments, it's going to be good or bad, or, comparing to other people and all of that. And I think it arises in everyone, even if you've not drawn since you were in kindergarten, or you're, you know, doing it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's part of why we come to Zen training, perhaps, is a sniff of that freedom of of the number we do on ourself, and to see what is that self we create, and what are the aspects of our ego. Ego's not a bad thing. It can serve very well, but sometimes it shuts down our entire system with that judgment, um, and suspicion and doubt, and we get very small,
Mm,
and a lot of our wounds about our experiences in art become sort of solid stories that we live out of. And so I think the whole of practice is to break free of those entangling thoughts, at least to see them clearly and give them the nectar they deserve, to make them work for us. And so, the creative process in the tradition, at first the Buddha, in India, said, not to start dancing and get lost in those events, because that was very prominent in the culture, and people kind of got dizzy in the samsara, in the spinning, in the swirling of that. And he was just like, quiet down, quiet down. And so now I think through the tradition, there's been more of an integration of um, studying the self that stops us, that becomes fixed and believed in a certain way, and to set that free so we can it's just our expression we're setting free, our entire being, the art of being alive, not just making things, but making our life, which may include making things. And I
yeah.
think each artist is always meeting that in their work, that sort of, and that's part of that tension is part of the beauty of creation, is being sort of meeting that and like keep going. It's like how to sort of, you know, relax and use that tension to keep finding our way back to trusting that something will come, something is in us.
Yeah.
Usually it's in its own timing.
Yes.
We
Never
have
the
to show up
timetable.
at
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah.
some way.
And I think about like when you were talking, like, yeah, how one thing that I feel that has sort of gone back and forth, say, between Zen training and art, or Zen practice and art practice, is learning how really nothing is a mistake. And sometimes it's very, like, I think about making some art project or painting or drawing, and it didn't turn out the way I wanted. Maybe I cut it up, use it in something else, or maybe I paint over it, or okay, that project wasn't exactly how I hoped, so now I want to go through, come in at this way. And even with Zen training, it's like, okay, I was supposed to ring the bell this way, but I rang it that way instead. But to see, like, oh, it's okay, like nothing, like it's really not about the actual thing, it's really what happened in my mind when it didn't turn out the way I expected. And
Yes.
that just like moves it, like, I don't know, permeates all of it, I guess. So yeah.
Yeah, interesting. You know, this sense of this word perfection and how we've been trained to think about that, even in the tradition, there's the perfections. And what actually is that? How do we keep our humanness and see our messiness as part of being perfectly imperfect? Um, Perfectly imperfect and needing some work along the way. And I was thinking of the Navajo rugs and how intentionally they would put mistakes,
Yeah.
um, break patterns, um, because that made it so much more effective. The asymmetry or a missed repetition, purposefully,
Yeah.
and plus whatever else happened along the way.
Yeah.
And so I think what you said about how we perceive these so-called mistakes has a lot to do with it. And sometimes it's just that hint from the universe that we're being nudged in another way. And sometimes we can press against that. That's that tension that gives it life. Or, like you said, go with it, you know,
Yeah.
integrate it, find something anew.
Yeah, and I do think we live in a culture of perfectionism, and I know I certainly have been raised that way and bought into that. And yeah, mistakes, the idea of making a mistake has loomed quite large as like a terrifying thing. And so the kind of building my capacity to not see a mistake as a problem, not even see it as a mistake, is like, it's so frees up so much energy.
Yeah.
And, there's that, like you say, there's tension and there's good tension, but there's also like that smallness that keeps
Right.
us.
And we can acknowledge a mistake.
Yeah.
There are, there are mistakes, and we start again.
Yeah.
Um, and some of the things are not the end of the world. So I have to remember sometimes it feels that way, and that's part of the artist's, again, work, is we are striving for something. We are bringing it up to some internal um, feeling that we feel about the work, um, but that it's also not the end of the world, where sometimes in the past, the suffering artist, um, like you couldn't create unless you really suffered and were in pain. Well, I don't think we have to add anything to that. We, it's
There's-
already, it's already comes with the package. Um, and so, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that also reminds me of you telling the story of how you've worked in ceramics and you make a lot of bowls, you draw bowls, you paint bowls, and you would leave a bowl right on the edge of the table. Maybe it'll fall off.
Maybe I'll bump it. Yeah.
Is that a
Yeah.
mistake?
Yeah. I found like, and sometimes I like to line them up, um, but yeah, sometimes I like to leave it in a little bit of a precarious state where something else could occur, like leave it out in the rain for a little bit and let it start to deteriorate because I can't make that happen. So I like these natural occurrences to take place in my work more and more, where I have very little control, so-called control, and the elements do more. And that's been hard to find because I always find myself getting in there, and there is to some degree, but also just trying to find both in firing pots and painting, how just natural laws can make the piece more than myself.
Mm. Yeah, and well, maybe this is a good entry into looking at some of your more recent work. Yeah, because I think a big question I have for you is, you are so busy in all those roles that I described at the beginning. It takes a lot of time. But, something that I always just feel inspired by is seeing how you are just also making work like there's not a always like, and sometimes maybe, but it's not like, okay, I need X hours of studio time versus now I'm working on being the Abbott or, it, and even the materials you use. And I'd love to hear about how this is evolving for you right now, like right now. So I'll share my screen and maybe looking at the work will be a way to talk about that.
Yes, the ritual of work. Uh,
Yeah.
and I don't really consider myself busy, but I have a lot to do and I can do and I love to do.
Yeah.
So we can be busy, which the Chinese characters for busyness is heart killing.
Oof.
Yes. Heart and killing above. So I don't consider myself busy if with under those terms. I'm not killing my heart. And mostly I look for what pleases my heart. Um, and doesn't mean I have to like everything I do. But some things need to be done that aren't pleasurable, but necessary. But yet I can do it from that kind of place. So people always say, "Oh, you're so busy," and I was like, "I can be because there's lots to take care of, but it's not. It's what my attention can has learned to open to it whatever happening in front of me. So I don't need special time dedicated to attention. That when I turn to it, I can give my attention for 5 minutes fully and make several powerful marks. So it's kind of what's developed. So I can um, accept, and it's what's the word I'm looking for? Uh, when it has to be workable. It's not the word I'm looking for. Uh, all of life, and all the facets that need to be taken care of. So you're not burnt out.
Right. Right. And
Sustainable. That's the word.
yeah.
How do I
Ye-
sustain this body that needs attention, is growing old, gets sick, and all of that? How do I sustain and pick out the things that are important to do in my ritual?
Yeah. Yeah, I have heard you talk about every day, like is liturgy from beginning to end.
Yes.
I think about that a lot. So, maybe I'll share. Uh, there we go. So these are some images that you shared with me, and I put them together. You don't actually know how, so but you had labeled them beginning, middle, and later, so I did follow that.
Okay. Yes. So I returned. I love to do no look drawing. It's one of my favorite techniques. And one thing I love is incompleteness. And you can see, and if you look at the word incomplete, it means it is complete, incompletion, incomplete.
Mm,
And so this tradition of the Zen brush, where you're using space and form, and you're leaving a lot more room for the observer and even for myself to complete um, what's not there with your own mind and heart, that we can't say it all. So why not leave some room? Why not leave some space? So these no looks are always kind of like that, like suggestion, hints, and just a piece of something. So even my clay pieces are, I'm really loving the broken pieces of bowl that suggest that there was a whole architecture.
mm.
I can grab one from my shelf in a bit.
Yeah, yeah. It makes me think about, well, just the human tendency to fill in. So, like looking at this drawing and being like, okay, you were drawing your hands, your fingers, but like, is that so important to know? I don't know. And even what you just said is, here I'm in Newfoundland right now, and there's a beach across the road from where I am. And one of my favorite things to find on the beach are little fragments of ceramics.
Hmm.
Some of them are quite old, clearly. And back in the day when everyone would throw all their garbage in the ocean, which fortunately we don't really do so much anymore. But there's a lot of broken ceramic, and it's almost like, I mean, to me, it feels like a treasure, because I can fill in the whole story, even if it's just a piece this big,
Oh,
you see a little fragment of a pattern or something. Yeah.
yeah. So, and this started from pieces blowing up in Raku. And I
So,
was just like, yeah. So this started with a piece that blew up in Raku. And so I was just like, oh, this is much better. And then some of the ends I'll put actually leaf trimming on it, like a kind of kintsugi without the rest of the piece there. So that's newly developing.
well, you were saying about allowing kind of the elements to do their work. That's the
That,
fire
yes,
working
yes.
beyond your control. And just to say, maybe this is also a good time to say that if you are about to start a week-long ceramic retreat at Zen Mountain Monastery up in Mount Tremper, New York, and people interested in working with you, do you do one a year or one every other year?
Do one a year, but we had so many people on the waiting list
Uh-huh.
that we decided, and I'll talk to you about this later, that we'd like to put in another Zen Arts intensive, which will involve many more aspects of the arts and more sitting in between, so we can look at how stillness moves into expression. So um, we can talk about that at some point
Yeah.
because I'd like you to be part of it.
Yeah, it sounds incredible. Yeah. Oh, it sounds like a dream.
In June, and then the clay retreats are in August.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah, great. So, and also maybe I'll use this chance also to say, since pandemic time, so now almost 4 years, you've been doing Friday morning online art practice time. So anyone anywhere in the world can go to the zmm.org and go to programs and find the registration. It's offered by donation, and then on Friday mornings, like an hour and a half, you're leading. Usually, you have a theme, and then you show sometimes some examples, and you talk for a while, and people from all over the world are there online in a Zoom room, and then we work for about half an hour and come back, and there's some sharing time.
Yes.
It's
It's
pretty fantastic.
Yeah, it's really enjoyable, very inspiring for me too, and keeps me going because I have to be working. That's what allows me to give the Dharma teachings and the prompts so readily, is that I'm also continuing my work. Yeah, which I always do something. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that. It's really, it does feel very alive that you really do bring in what's interesting to you that week, you know? And then you just kind of like invite us all in, like, okay, what about you, you know?
So we'll be working the new thing to look for. It's going to be called Fresh Unfamiliar. So how do we look at our life, at our work, each time fresh and unfamiliar? How do we bring that back each time? Because it is new. And so sometimes it means allowing space, walking away, bringing back something from years ago to continue with. Um, I got a quote from Cezanne where he says, it'll be a revolution when we can finally look at a carrot and see it new.
Wow.
Uh, Something like that. I can't get to it right now, but that would be a revolution.
It would be.
So I
I've always
said,
thought everyone was drawing every day. We kind of all the world's problems would be solved.
sitting and drawing, meditating and drawing.
Yeah, because you have to look. All right,
Yeah.
so this is I kind of organized the fragments and then the larger pieces just so this is how it is. But maybe do you want to talk a little bit about like what is this?
Yeah, sure. So I started to work on paper bags because we got so many brown bags stored up. I thought, wow, this is beautiful paper. There's a history of brown paper bags that I won't go into right now, but there is a little bit about who was working on bags and why, and lots of artists made notes on bags. So I was taking fragments, ripping the bags, and then doing just small pieces and suggestions that something continued, some image continued off of it,
Hmm. Yeah.
and then started connecting them, putting them together.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't necessarily mean to
That's
go.
fine.
Yeah, so you can see, let me see, I'll get the little cursor here. You can see that the handle
Mm-hmm.
comes
That's
through.
the handle, yes. And then you'll see on some, I use the color gold a lot. I use gold paint because we have this relationship to gold as a precious material. And I loved like gold painted paper bags. It was sort of like this precious paper bag,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
And it
yeah,
wasn't a manufactured one, it was like painted gold.
yeah. I think they just discovered that Rembrandt used gold dust in some of his paints that gives it that shimmer.
Yes.
So,
Even the early stained glass, I used to have a stained glass business, and to get some of the richness of colors, there was gold in the glass, like the reds and yeah, they
oh,
had gold. That's what I learned. Yeah.
mm,
They don't do that so much anymore.
it is luminous. Yeah.
Be the turned a bit, but that's okay. Or
Oh,
maybe it was that way. I've turned them so many times.
yeah, it was one of them. I was like, is this the same thing, but you just turned it upside down? But we'll see that in a minute.
Yes. Yeah, so this I was just riffing off of it with I'd find a string and I was like, continue. just continue, one continuous thread sort of moving through it.
Yeah, and as your eye moves through, it's like, it almost looks like you could build you could build several stories, like, oh, it looks like an ocean, and maybe it's then moving through the day into night, and I don't know, that's what coming, but and it could be none of that, right?
Right. Sometimes I usually pick up on a line or a thread. And again, working with space, leaving that open suggestion.
And this is in your room in Brooklyn at the temple.
Mhm. Yes. Yes, it's all, and I have a room designated to working there. Yeah.
Hmm. This is, I think, a detail.
Mm.
Yeah. So you can see some bowl images. I
Yes.
think the one where you gave me both this way and that way.
That's that's right. That's probably the way I did it, broken shards and reconstructing and trying to, like with the spaces in between, also suggest um, the formless form. I'm starting to see more just as it sits there. But
Yeah.
that's what I like, is that it can continue. It can continue. We can fill in that this is a very full setup here. My dream is to recreate the Last Supper.
Oh, really?
I did it in clay with vessels representing people. And I often do that. I'll take something from my life and with people, and they'll become pots. And, they'll be, described in their fullness or their openness at the top or their thin necks, or as a communication of energy between things. Um, so the Last Supper has so much energy between and tension between all of those folks at the table, um, that I would like to make a long paper bag Last Supper.
I love that. Takeout.
Oh, yes, well, that's not a bad idea.
Sorry, I couldn't resist to say that.
That's how we influence. Oh,
Yeah.
takeout, yeah,
You carry out the bag. Um, that
yeah,
would be incredible across a whole wall.
yeah,
Amazing.
yeah. Or walk within it. Lots of
Oh,
possibility.
that would be amazing. Yeah, okay, so then these are some more works on paper.
Right. I started to get interested in the line itself more, and also I wanted to free myself up to not be in a category. Like I had to paint something realistic. I love to do that, like, or something in front of me, something just abstract, or take drips that were left from the last painting, like this, and then, make these kind of sewn divisions. So I was exploring with lines that were similar to what you might get on a sewing machine or sewing by hand, and actually sewing the paper too. And it started to go into these divisions, and then I would white out half or a
Mhm,
portion.
mhm.
And and sometimes I would make it try and go back to the paper, like nothing happened here, but it did, you
Uh-huh.
know?
Yeah.
So this is kind of an exploring of that.
Yeah, I really appreciate in your working process that you don't, um, or maybe that I'll put it more positively. You give yourself the permission to be all the things, you know? It's
Yeah, because
not,
I was finding I was getting to this stuck corner of like, what should I do? Like, am I doing it? And I was like, well, what's my sensation saying? Like, I want some color today. I want to look at this bottle and do it. So I was just like, do it. Like, don't stop. The with the sensory experience wants to directly encounter, let it in, and then go from there.
yeah. I mean, you said earlier, like, you have to show up.
Mhm.
actually. You have to make a mark.
Or a voice or a movement, because sometimes I'll move. So this has actual stitches on it,
Okay.
and it's done with plant material.
Yeah, so that is one of your something I've learned from you, which is you call juicing and pressing the plant material right onto the paper or
Like chrysanthemums. This is chrysanthemums and some very aged iris, which
uh,
is very, very gooey, but still has a lot of give and color. And this is just walking down the street in Brooklyn, just to the river. I made it as I was walking and then stitched it later. This again, this is the beginning of this sort of halving, which has surprised me because I was like, I used to say, never put something down the center. And now I'm like, down the center. And I'm really looking at like dualities meeting, like sort of like I don't think of it that way, but a little bit, like going back to the blankness and then the activity happening on one side. So very, yeah, that's that attempt to white, white out or black out.
yeah. Yeah. Also just interesting you said you were doing it while you were walking.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yes. Yes. So I would just stop for a moment and engage the plant. If usually I don't pick, but I take what has dropped so that the plant has already given it up.
Yeah.
And and I and I appreciate that they're giving life. And I
Yeah.
re-give that life, some
Ex-
life.
yeah, exactly. You actually then share it and acknowledge the power. I mean, even a gooey dead iris
Always
flower.
reminded me like we tend to discard old things, people, that, but they still have so much juice and really beautiful juice in them. Um, and until they're dried up. Um, and then there's something else. But if they still have some moisture, they will give.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. So these are the next few images are these half, I guess you could say half and half or divided or yeah, deliberately. Well, tell what's the process of these?
Yeah, so this was a whole piece first. I did the whole bowl, if you will, and then I just let it run. I just basically put the um white a white sfumata over it, um, and just let it run.
Hmm.
And so it just dissolved that side and left traces of what was its entirety. And that's kind of like scary because we make something that looks like something and you don't want to like ruin it. And I'm into like ruining it, so to speak.
Yeah.
I remember Pat Steer, my friend, the painter Pat Steer, like she used in her early work, she would paint a pear, like, or an apple really realistically, and then put a big old black X and say, this is a painting. It's not a pear. It's a painting of a pear. Don't mistake in the reality. And she would just put, and I was like, that would just like go through me so strongly that she had this guts to X out this like really well painted pear. So it kind of comes from that. She influenced me on that leap into just changing something that you thought was so precious and wanted to preserve and saying like it's just a painting.
Yeah.
This is this is what paint does, okay? It can look like this, it can look like this.
It's so funny, like how it feels like bravery to do such a thing.
I know, because you fall in love, you kind of like it, it's like you want to keep it and, show it. And it's like, okay, we're gonna try something different here.
Yeah, and also just what the traces that are still there, like the pencil line and the drips of color and yeah. Yeah,
So
I
this is
mean,
an early one. It feels sort of a little, you know, it was good. It was a breakthrough, but it's a little timid still. Still working it out.
get to some more here.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is truly like I love when you like like yeah, there's like this rule. Never divide something right down the center, or never put something right in the center, like bad art. It's like, okay.
I'm glad you mentioned it, and maybe it's getting into the crone years, but just like rules.
Yeah.
And you know, I think that's big in the in our culture now. It's like what has been set in place and how is it serving towards the good, the freedom of people, of ourselves? Or is it just a rule by someone that really doesn't serve? That's really, so I think I am, in a sense, that is in my mind. I am pushing against what what I've
Yeah.
learned,
Yeah.
and what I think is right or wrong, and yet what is right and what is wrong, and
Yeah.
to, you know, put that out front too.
Yeah, and just really see, is that a rule?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And like, who benefits from this rule?
Who benefits? Or is that just a guideline? You know, are rules just guides like towards something? So I think there is an element of breaking something here. And I love breaking, so because it seems to be going in accord with breaking, breaking up modes of being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Some more.
Yes, I just did this one with my mother. I was visiting her, and I know she can understand flowers. Like if I draw flowers, like, oh, you know. So I did this with her just to see her how she would react to this kind of thing. And
Huh.
she was interested. Like part of her was like, oh, because she could see, identify, and I know the other side was a little interesting. And it was raining. It was raining, so some of the marks were happening by the rain hitting the paper, and I just emphasized the drippiness. I have this is with those Coptic pens and a regular pen, so I like smears. I like to find how things, you know, are sharp and then you can blur them.
Hmm.
And
My
maybe
mom,
that,
oh, that's different when she
yeah,
doesn't understand something.
that's different. Right. And Parker's like, oh, that's a flower. Oh, but that's different.
Yeah.
Oh, oh. And I could see the division happening. And I was like, excellent.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah. Yeah, also just to say like, okay, that day you wanted to draw the flowers, so you do the flowers.
Yes. And then I keep staring. So I think most creatives, like there's a process of like stepping away and just looking at it for a while. You know, it has to grow. You do something and then you're like, what happened? And you got to watch it until it starts to speak again,
Mhm.
right? So sometimes you get something done and then you watch it like this is not looking like this anymore. So I don't have the updated one, but it's changed because I just stared at it for a while. And I think the division got harder, perhaps,
Yeah,
clearer.
it's subtle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's still there. But you know, that edge we've talked about before of I don't like to know the piece. Like when I fall into knowing and I find that that's the routine that's like, ah, a part of me dies there and so does the piece. So I keep picking up new materials together so I don't know again, even though I know them a little bit. And their characters in some places, but I never know, oh, what will this happen in combination, or if I put this over this. So that's like the invitation is to keep that part going.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think when people, are adults, like as kids, we're very encouraged to be learning. Like that's kind of your role in life is to be a student, right? When you're young. And then when we get adults, we sort of find the things that we know how to do and do them and then to step into something unknown can feel so uncomfortable but I often think, oh, it's like, are you ever more alive than when you're like doing something you don't quite understand? Or like uh sometimes I've taught knitting, and these people are like PhDs and whatever, and they're like gripping the needles and they're so scared to make a mistake. And I just think, yeah, but like you're so alive right now, like really paying attention. And yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
beautiful. And I feel for these kids because I think it's that response is getting more and more usurped, and I've seen young kids really afraid to make a mark, like really young, like, and yeah, so
Yeah.
there's so
Yeah.
much pressure, and their schedules besides that are so intense.
Yeah, and I love that you keep looking. I've often think about Andy Goldsworthy in that first movie that's about his work, Rivers and Tides, I think it's called.
Yes.
And he talks about, he's building something and the tide is going to come in and it's like a stone cone-like thing that he makes. And then the tide is coming in and about, it's going to cover the piece that he made. And he talks about how he likes to finish it in time that he can spend a little time and see it before it actually gets kind of washed away.
Mm.
And I hear that in what you're saying too, of like, oh, you need to like live with it for a little while. And then there's the making, but then there's like a communication afterwards that if you take the time with it, can reemerge or emerge.
Yes, beautiful, because really we're just the receptacle for the work coming through, right? So I don't know what that is, but that energy you speak of, it's just like it has gets its own momentum, and we just have to like be available as that receptacle to catch it and bring it forward in its momentum, I feel like.
Yeah, and then if we're lucky, we can stand back and kind of be like, what was that?
Right. If we're lucky, right. Get to surprise ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if this was supposed to go
Yep,
vertical.
it's fine. Yeah, so this was just, I just wanted to scribble da, 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 with my pens. And then I just took half away.
Is this actual stitching or this is a line that you drew?
It's
Like
a
this.
line, but I move it like it's a stitch. And I found that on the train. Like when I worked on the train, there's a quiver that you can't get anywhere else. So I now I quiver a little bit and I can repeat this sort of quivery, like motory, stitchy line.
I love that the train is like giving you.
I just wanna hang out, look out the window, and just let it.
Yeah.
Just trying it in different formats.
I mean, what you were saying earlier about in traditional Zen art, this idea of leaving space and yeah, when you were talking about that, I was thinking about this one in particular of
Somebody said, "Oh, I don't usually let people look for a while," but there was like two worlds, and I was thinking about sort of Sophia and sort of being brought down, beneath the world,
Mhm.
being pulled under.
Wow. Yeah, this one has a lot of juice. Yeah.
Just to change the shape. So I did
Yeah.
a bunch of experiments with just because my energy just wanted to use these pens, and so I just did a lot of them and then just started different kinds of dividing. So I just gave you a few flavors of that.
Yeah. I mean, this word permission keeps coming back for me about like using pens, even just like use a pen. You have a pen, use it, and then, oh, you want to make a lines like this or like this, like just do it. And even, I hope you don't mind me pointing this out, but like even the little bit of the smudgy thumbprint or fingerprint is like, yeah, it's
I have
fine.
dirty fingers.
Yeah. It's okay.
Yes. We're trying to get into the more subconscious direct sensory experience. Even though there's some intention here of like, okay, I'm going to make a circle, that just doesn't evolve. But trying to then allow it to move into a more subconscious sensory touch, tactile, hearing, let all of that in rather than how I want it.
Yeah, the sound of making those marks.
Yes. And we all have those drawers with like 10 billion pens in it that we buy and don't use. So I just get them all together, stick them in a jar and use them.
I love
I
that.
love pens and I like to get them too. I love pens and I love blue ink. I
Hmm.
love I love cobalt ink.
Hmm. Yeah.
It
Well,
smears good too.
do you like Delftware ceramics? It doesn't really strike me as your thing, but
Well,
maybe it's
yeah.
somewhere in
I mean, I don't not like it, but it has its
yeah,
beauty for sure.
yeah, that blue and white.
Mm-hmm. It's sideways, but
I wasn't sure. It's like, should it be a couch or could it
yes,
be?
that's good. It was, a piece of the couch, and then I just went over it with a marker.
Hmm. Yeah, I debated with this one. I was like,
Yeah,
see
good.
what it is, but I kind of like,
Good. It gives me a chance to look at it differently too. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So that's helpful, and often I will do that, turn things upside down, put things together. Yes.
Yeah, I recall in one of the art practices, Friday practices, you just like found a thread on your sketchbook page, and then that started a drawing, and then started a
Dental
whole
floss.
series of drawings and
Dental floss.
a dental floss.
All smashed and curled up, and I was like, oh wow, this is gorgeous. And it's that marine that you use, that kind of marine aqua color.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So pretty. This mashed floss looked like it came from the sea.
Oh, this is the last image, so I included it. So yeah, maybe you want to talk a little bit about what's going on here.
Yeah, so this was during a clay retreat. And this was a pure sensory um, practice. As you can see, people have their eyes closed and I think they're responding to some unknown music, or just listening to sounds in the room. But I do think this might have been a musical piece that was something that was unknown and just sounds. And so it moved in different tempos, sometimes very slow, and then it would go very fast and staccato, and it was sort of like the five rhythms, lyrical, and so they got a taste of everything in that one and just moved through it and just trusting that they could feel their way through, keep their eyes closed. Some still drew pictures. It was interesting. Um, drew things, but by the time it ended, they dropped that, and I see they went right over it again. And we talked about it, but yeah, and it's nice to work in different positions, not always like standing or at a desk, but people were encouraged to lay down,
Mm.
to turn over, to whichever way their body wanted to make marks. And sometimes I'll just lay paper out and it's as though you're waking up from sleep and you just have you have mark making material in your and you just do your routine of stretching and you're just recording these natural delicious movements with crayons in your hands. And I like those. And then the body was there, so when you get up from the image you could feel like there was something there that
Hmm.
is down the center. And yeah, they've been kind of interesting.
Wow. Yeah. And I love that you have Mark making things in both hands because we can get so in our
Yes,
dominant hand, and you know,
right.
this other one has something to say too. Yeah.
I learned from doing some work with trauma that, and it might be again part of this division is this two hands, is that when we work with both hands, we calm down
Oh.
because the mind doesn't go to one side or the other, and it has to sort of open to this double thing happening, and it calms you down.
Wow. I,
So yeah, we used to do it in sort of, for a way to work with authentic kind of movement,
mhm.
calming down, soothes the vagus nerve,
Yeah, that makes sense.
big nerve that moves down the center of the body.
Yeah.
People actually calmed down while they were working with their two hands. Afterwards, they felt just like wow, just settled in a new way.
Yeah. I recall a breath workshop you led at the temple. So
Right.
you sometimes bring in the breath as well, and two
That's
hands, and you sort of led us through kind of a deepening way to experience our breath, but then like recording that experience on paper. And yeah, I know that. I remember thinking, wow, I should do this every day during session because you sort of drop right in.
right. So that was based on the Anipasanada Sutra, the sutra on awareness of breath that the Buddha gave, and knowing like I am taking a short breath, right? We worked with that, whatever that is. I am taking a long breath and just letting that go into the image. And then we worked right on top of, right, all the breaths on one piece. Yeah,
Hmm.
it was
Yeah,
good.
it was good. Yeah, and you just to say you know, uh, you have your sort of favorite media that you work with, ceramic, drawing, I definitely painting. But lately you've been kind of doing more with sound and voice and movement. Do you want to say a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, they've always been there. And I write a lot. Like I've always written too, like poems and whatever's. So again, it's part of that, like, I don't personally, some artists feel like they have to concentrate on one medium and go and get some depth, and I have. And then at this point, it's opened up where I like including the others because, as I'm painting, there is sound, and I'm just curious about the whole of it, the whole of our um, what's creating ourself at that moment.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm.
So Yeah, we'll see what happens with I like collaboration too, as you know, because I've collaborated with you and I really like to bring others in and share the expressions and work, develop the third thing between us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe this is the perfect time to mention that in the fall of 2025, uh, you'll be presenting, I think for the first time, a kind of retrospective-ish exhibition at the Yager Museum at Hartwick College, which is in Oneonta, New York, upstate New York. Um, yeah, and a large part of that is going to be including this idea that art is as a teaching practice.
Yes.
Zen, it's really well. Maybe do you want to talk about what the
Yeah,
exhibition?
you're doing good. Yeah, I I think it is that it's been I came to the monastery because Daido Roshi, my teacher, put art practice as one of the paths of liberation. I don't know that I would have come otherwise because I didn't know that I was ready to give it up or how it integrated, or if it had to be either or. So I wasn't sure. And so I just want to offer that um, these years of working and also invite my students that I've been working with that are developing in their work as a thread to that continuity of a lineage of having expression as part of a way to see our true nature and liberate the self that's binding and confining the thoughts within that as well. So it's I've worked small over the years, smaller because I haven't had like the big studio to do large paintings. There'll be a few from years back, very large, which I did, and then mostly a lot of smaller stuff and clay and whatever else appears. We're going to put that together.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah. In the sort of yeah, I'm excited to see how it all unfolds and then gets presented and how one of the reasons has ended up for now at Hartwick is they have a strong religious studies program and the students are gonna, they're gonna be sort of part of it, you
right.
know.
So they have a curatorial um, training, education at the school. So the students will be part of learning how to set up an exhibition with a live artist. Um, And so I love that part again, that it's a training an educational opportunity. Also, we have a connection to Hartwick where the Buddhist teacher there, Sandy Huntington, would bring his students to the monastery to see a monastery, to see that this life existed, that there are monastics, there is lay practice, how they are separate paths and yet are interdependent, how have to really work together and unfortunately, Sandy passed away a few years ago, and so I feel so um, grateful that we're doing this there. Um, it sort of feels very connected to him, and
Mhm.
he's brought my teacher there to exhibit. So I feel like this is a circle that's happening.
Yeah.
And most of the work I've done, I usually just stash away. I paint. Nobody sees. So it'll be interesting for me too to
Yeah.
see to see the world. I think we're going to call it worlds within worlds, but that may change. But that's what it is so far. So I hope you, as the viewers, if you're in New York, we'll keep you posted, and you're so welcome to come.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be sometime, probably September
September third
20.
week or
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Hojin, for sharing your work and your process and how it integrates with your life as a Zen teacher.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I really always enjoy doing this with you. So keep it on. 6 years. Oh my God. That's hard to believe, but yay. They've been great. So thank you for bringing this to the world that we can meet the rituals and the people that are working in all the different ways that things do come about. Yeah. I hope we can do you one day. Maybe we'll swap.
Yeah, okay.
Aha. That's a new one.
Thanks, Hojin.
Thank you.